interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Bam.
Tomorrow, we launch what we are calling Project Reintegration.
My public is here. You want to see something cool?
Many of us have superpowers.
I'm not wearing pants to dance.
These people claim to have traveled through time.
Hey, what's up and welcome back to Pondering Pilots, and today we're going to be talking about the 4th episode of 4400 entitled Harlem's Renaissance Man. So this episode was primarily focusing on Dr. Andre, and boy was there a few revelations going on in this episode, which for those of you wondering are certainly woke. Dr. Andre gets woke, so to speak. But we'll get to that in a second. But continuing on with the story from the last episode, we know that there was a leaked video exposing the harsh living conditions for the 4400, and so the big suits on top decided to pull a bit of a PR stunt and allow some of the 4400 to have a day trip, which was complete and utter bullcrap because their definition of some people was like 4 people. You know how many day trips it would take to get everybody out? 1100. One day trip a day, that's 3 years. There's your first 3 seasons of the show. God, I hope not. Anyways, you'd imagine that a majority of the importance going on in this episode would be things that these people do on their day trip. But not so. In fact, those 4 that get to go on their little field trip do next to nothing. The only thing to note there is the Reverend heads to a library to look up his son and what's going on in his life. He finds a podcast where his son just trash talks him like crazy, which leads the Reverend to cry. But I mean, if you're actually listening to the podcast itself, his son was talking about being anti-conversion therapy, which is the real sin, so he was more trash-talking the faith that believes in that kind of thing more than he really was his own father. So I don't really know what the big deal was. No, the real focus on in this episode was Dr. Andre as he tests everybody's health as they perform their own powers. He wants to know why some people have powers while others don't. And here's the biggest thing. He's willing to be a little bit pushy to get these people to agree to be tested. And he ends up upsetting everybody. Now, this is very subtle. It's hard to imagine him upsetting everybody because he's such a nerdy McNerd face. But he does. He gets pushy. We learn that Mildred really does have great powers, but if she's being touched while using those powers, she can't stop. It becomes unstable, which could be very dangerous if somebody knows that. There's also like a strange room that Dr. Andre finds by the end of the episode that I'm not entirely sure where that leads. He sees a rat or something hide under the door, and when he enters that room, it's like this endless hallway. Now, I don't know if it's a real hallway that he just happens to find in this hotel, or if it has something to do with maybe an ability that he has? Hard to say at this point, but the big woke revelation of the episode was simply, we learned that Dr. Andre is trans. He didn't ever really know this before because in his time period there was no such thing as trans, at least no real word for it. But we get a quick flashback to him learning about Theo Germain's character talking about being trans and his reaction to that, and we now know this reaction has to be understanding and learning something about himself instead. So he tells all this to Shanice, and she accepts this about him before the two of them kiss. So I guess that means that Dr. Andre is a lesbian transgendered woman. I'm not entirely sure. I'm a little bit confused at this point. But once again, I was kind of bored with the insistence on showcasing a lot of flashbacks. These made a little bit more sense and were a little bit more important in the long run, but most of it could have probably been told in a 2-minute expository line of dialogue. Also, a lot of people keep bringing up the fact that the government would be more interested in the 4400. So where are they? This episode kind of hints at where they are, and that is they know something about the 4400. Now, whether they know that they're time travelers or abducted by aliens or whatever, we're not sure, but the government definitely knows something about them, and they know more than they're letting on. So why exactly are they keeping in the shadows? Why are they staying away? That's the real question that needs to be answered. But overall, I did enjoy this episode, and I'm still enjoying the show as a whole and these characters, even though the characters aren't the strongest in the world and the characters in the original show were miles better, but still, I'm very much interested to see where the show goes from here on out. But what about you guys? Did you see this 4th episode? And if so, let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.